Patrick Maguire's latest book, Get In, the inside story of Labour under Starmer, details certain accounts of Starmer's ineffectiveness as Labour leader. One specific comment was from Morgan McSweeney, one of the architects of right-wing faction Labour Together and the man behind Keir Starmer's rise. McSweeney was openly fatalistic, questioning his boss's lack of politics. Keir acts like a HR manager, not a leader. What's the point of circling the wagons if you can't last? Also revealed in the book and in the Times was the plot to replace Starmer as leader. Revealed the moment Wes Streeting confronted Rachel Reeves about which of them would run if Keir Starmer quits. In a Commons vote and lobby in 2022, Reeves refused to be drawn, though plot was already afoot to install Shadow Chancellor. Now, the timing of this seems quite deliberate. The book releasing with people from Starmer's inner circle complaining about him, and discussions of who would replace him. Novel, is Morgan McSweeney ready to dump Starmer and replace him already?
I honestly think that Morgan McSweeney was always ready to dump Starmer from the beginning. I mean, you have far more competent types, which the Labour factions would like probably Wes Streeting, for example, to take that position. I think really the most interesting thing about all of this is it completely mirrors what the public has been feeling and saying about Starmer. And, whether you're on the left or even the right, everyone knows that when Starmer gets up on stage, it's quite frankly non-appealing, centrist. You don't want to listen to him. And so from the very beginning, it seems like Starmer really had no political narrative. It was to oust Corbyn from the party and think, well, maybe I could run my own little political campaign. But he's really delivered nothing. And it's not just apparent to us, but it's apparent to the people around him. And so, going forward, I honestly don't know what exactly Labour has in store. Like I said, I believe Wes Streeting might look like someone they'd like to have there. But what's really interesting is whoever does replace Starmer, if said happens, those columns I've mentioned that the insiders at Labour are wanting someone that's a bit more right than Starmer, weirdly enough, talking about how Vet Cooper should have been replaced because she was failing to tackle the Islamist terror as someone that overlooks that sort of thing. So I'm really not quite sure what he has in stock. But I just, I do find it interesting that what we see on the outside is something that's completely mirrored on the inside.
I mean, I'm completely with you that I do think Wes Streeting is more competent. I use air quotes, by the way, competent than Keir Starmer. He's not a better politician, but I think he's more competent. And I think if I was Morgan McSweeney, I wouldn't want someone who's too competent because clearly he controls. I call him the shadow prime minister. He installed Keir Starmer. He was his project from the beginning. And maybe Wes Streeting is too ideologically right-wing. For me, I don't think that's... and I think a lot of what people are saying in the inner circles of Keir Starmer in this book, they are right. They're saying he's kind of apolitical. He's like a HR manager because he's a vacuum inside. The problem with Wes Streeting is he's more ideologically right-wing. And yes, that might line up with Morgan McSweeney and the Labour Together people because they are very much on the Labour right, but it might make him a bit harder to control. There's also the fact, my next question was going to be, a hypothetical situation, what do you think of Rachel Reeves or Wes Streeting becoming Labour leader? But I guess the question I want to follow up from this one is, Wes Streeting won his seat by the skin of his teeth. 500 votes. And, I wrote a tweet out yesterday saying, I actually hope Wes Streeting becomes leader and that the next election, Liam Mohammed replaces him. So, couple of questions there for you. What would you make of all of that?
Well, as far as Wes Streeting's appeals goes to, as someone as Labour leader, I think possibly, yes, he is a bit right wing, but even on some issues, Wes Streeting, I don't know how there would be a reconciliation of how popular he is. Like you said, he won just by the skin of his teeth, but even the fact that his social care plan is to be released 1 year before the general election. I mean, you look at after World War II, Nye Bevan did it in about 3 years. And so why does Streeting have to have someone do it for him and be 1 year before the general election? But, that sort of plotting, that sort of, I guess the word would be not sneaky, but, politics essentially might be something that Morgan McSweeney actually is quite on board because unlike Starmer, who comes up with a bunch of plans from thin air. It seems like Wes Streeting can kind of play the game a little bit. So there might be some level of not like you said, competency there. Reeves, I think especially as well, she's very very sensible, but I think she bores people far too much. Whereas Streeting is someone that can play the game of politics. But it is certainly. I'm sort of 50-50 on that question. I'm not 100% sure. But I think Streeting probably looks the most able to play the Labour game at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it pains me to say it, but yes, I think out of all three, Wes Streeting has the most charisma. And I don't think he's particularly charismatic, but you're right. He knows how to play the game a little bit better. I think maybe Morgan McSweeney was surprised at how wooden Keir Starmer is. When I was researching this story, there was something else that came out, which is in the Times and the book, is that he hired an actress. I can't remember her name now. I should remember her name. But he hired her to sort of improve his speeches. And they're like, "Yeah, well done. You've improved so much." And I'm like, "Where's the improvement? He's still terrible." Rachel Reeves is incredibly uncharismatic. She's like a robot, really, really bad. The two of them.
It's like you said, there is really no charisma there. Even Rachel Reeves, who was just speaking recently on Sky and essentially talking and questioned about her fiscal rules. The prompt was brought up that, how can you justify certain cuts that you've made, and how will this affect the working population? They just bring out statistics and numbers, and it's quite literally it's robotic. It doesn't make any sense. It's not something that will appeal to the average person. But another thing about Streeting is he's got quite good networking and links to the private healthcare industry, right? That's something that the Labour NEC might find very attractive because they themselves are people in the hedge fund business. So, there is another incentive there to look that way forward, especially because Streeting has a complete amount of zero empathy for example, transgender teenagers as well. So I do think that there is something potentially there. I think Reeves would bore people to death, but I think that like you said, I think Streeting can play that game.
In terms of his comments on trans people, I don't think that's a battle those on the inside of the Labour Party particularly care about or want to fight. But I think if Wes Streeting had a safe seat, I could see there being moves to replace Keir Starmer already. I mean, do you think that Starmer will be replaced before the next election, or do you think they're going to try and stick at him? Because the attack the Labour Party had against the Tories was they keep changing prime ministers, they keep changing people, they can't, they're not a stable government. Replacing a Labour prime minister who won a huge majority. Of course, obviously, first past the post means it was a loveless landslide, to quote Jeremy Corbyn. But it was still a huge landslide in terms of seats. So that should solidify your place as prime minister. So to replace him before the first term, it shows that they're chaotic. So is there an incentive to keep Starmer on, do you think? Or is he that much of a dud? He's that unpopular? Better to get rid straight away.
It really just depends on how Starmer's politics will continue, and they are quite bleak, and they will continue to be bleak, and there will be that crisis within Labour insiders that will be looking to replace him, and I genuinely think he will be, because, like we said, Labour together and Starmer's basically soft coup to oust Jeremy Corbyn, with the Labour right. Was something that I don't actually think planned this far ahead, and they were quite surprised, in fact, by, like you said, Starmer's complete dryness to do politics. There is no vision here that Starmer will do anything different. In fact, he just quite literally likes ignoring domestic things and going on meetings with very popular people all around the globe.
Making 100-year pacts with Ukraine.
Yeah, which politically means nothing.
Means nothing, yeah.
Refusing to even just recently comment about anything on Trump and saying, well, I don't have to choose between the EU and the US. They're going to need someone that makes a firm decision, because before the public gets fed up with it, Labour insiders will.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.